proposal to increase tax revenues for properties. The first item on the agenda is that we will conduct a public hearing. If you wanted to speak at the public hearing, you should have already turned in your request to speak to Alicia.
Can we call for more? Do we have any more? Anybody? No, I just want.
Do you need to do a quorum check since it's, okay. All right, I'm going to let Mr. Grimes kind of give an overview of what we're doing.
Okay, good evening. I've been saying good morning all afternoon, so I'm going to get my bearings straight here for a second. So we've had two budget workshops, which were held in August at various times, and there was much debate and much discussion over property taxes, the tax rate, and where this council wants to set it. The initial budget that came out almost over a month ago, I guess now, had a 3.5% increase of additional revenue in it. There was some discussion at the initial meeting about an increase of going up to the cap of 7.9. There was some discussion about keeping it at 3.5. At the last council budget workshop, there was some discussion about keeping the tax rate the same. So one of the marching orders that we got out of that last workshop was to put together a tax rate that would remain the same, but would be calculated differently between M&O and INS. So and they have copies that's been distributed, correct, Alicia? This should have been distributed, huh?
The budget?
Yes. We put the proposed budget that came out of the workshop online last week. It has an interest and sinking tax rate of 0.2449, and it has an M&O tax rate of 0.2918. That'll give you the same tax rate of 0.5367. Some interesting notes from the budget. Police and fire make up for 94% of the general tax revenue. That would be M&O taxes and sales taxes. The budget includes, I believe, the addition of one new police salary. The budget also addresses COLA and compression issues within both public safety departments. It also includes $120,000 for residential road repairs. And it also has a $375,000 transfer from the enterprise fund. And so those are the significant notes that came out of the two workshops that we've had. And you have the budget in front of you.
And I think what we have now is something that we've come together as a council and support. I'd like to make one additional proposal that we would consider to have Brian revise, and that is we had a Parks Board Parks Steering Committee meeting, and I think it would be really beneficial for us to start funding at a very small amount our Parks Board, possibly instead of having the road budget at $120K, drop it to $115K and have $5K that our Parks Department or Parks Board would be able to plan for an event. And this next year, as we get the playground online with what we've already funded through the tax note earlier this year, eventually we're going to need a Parks Department for maintenance. And this is a very small amount to sort of show we're headed that direction so that we show we are serious about putting a Parks Department together.
Well, I got good news for you.
All right, Gary.
I found a $15,000 error, and not to pick on Mike, in the fire department budget. So they're $15,000 over than what they're supposed to be.
Which error did you find?
It was a math problem.
Okay.
So if you add up,
Where are you at? First of all, where are you at in the fire department budget?
Hey, Gary. You found it in the right way.
Yeah, good direction.
so if you add up all
769?
the vote items,
Mm-hmm. So you're looking at your personnel?
all of it, you add up the total budget,
Okay.
everything in bold, add it up,
Mm-hmm.
Just subtract his $15,000 revenue,
Subtract, okay.
and then you end up with 1,105,000.
1 million, as the loss would be 1,105,000?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was it.
Yeah. It doesn't come out that way in the spreadsheet.
So you can add them up, just double check.
Have you talked to Chief Lenore?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I just found that last night.
Okay.
I couldn't sleep.
You couldn't sleep, so you looked at the budget?
Yeah. Okay, well, obviously, we'll look through and check those
Just curious,
numbers.
did it work?
Yeah, did it put you to sleep?
Well, what took me the longest is figure out how it was made, the mistake was made, but I
How,
understand it.
how was the mistake made?
It was all added together, and then he subtracted 15,000 from it, so he basically zeroed out the revenue. He
So the
didn't-
revenue didn't get calculated into the loss calculation?
Okay,
Gotcha.
got it, okay.
That's a spreadsheet error, and I'll
Right.
take a look at
Yeah.
it.
Spreadsheet calculation.
Thank you.
Any thoughts on adding some token money to a parks?
Well, there's your 15,000.
Well, 15,000.
Well, so the question becomes, you have 15,000 of seed that you can do for parks money. Do you want to reduce the road fund?
Keep the
by-
road at 120 and, or
Well, let's
125?
find out if that's correct, I mean, if
Yeah,
the
we'll find
calculation
the
is
number
correct.
first before we go spreading
Yeah.
it somewhere.
So
Right.
if you assume the numbers are, so let's start this way. What number do you want to put in, if you want to put in a number, what do you want it to be for parks?
That's,
I wouldn't touch the roads.
Okay?
We need
Okay.
as much.
so if we can find an error, you're good with funding the parks at some level?
Yeah.
And then we can present it next week, whatever those numbers are.
Sure.
So, whether we add more to roads or, okay, that's something
you-
that we can.
So you're comfortable with the 15 then? Okay.
Confirm it. and-
You may do 15 even? Because I know, I'm pretty sure the numbers, yeah, I guess it will if you didn't calculate the
15,
revenue, yeah. Yep. Okay.
Okay,
If Gary's wrong, and I don't think Gary's wrong because he's a Marine. If Gunny is wrong, then where do you want to do 15? And if so, where do you want me to take it from?
I vote for dropping roads. That's where we were at 100K, and then when we decided on a higher tax rate, we added it to roads.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've come to a compromise, but that's just by going up to a higher tax rate than what we had initially discussed, it was supposed to go into roads. So I just say take a little bit more from that roads.
Okay. You want to do?
Where were we at with roads?
So you got 120,000 in roads. Yeah. What Leah is suggesting is that we drop the 120 to 115, and we take that $5,000 and we put it into a parks fund.
And then any extra mistakes can go back into the road.
Okay.
Like, and if that would be 10K,
Okay.
that would be adding to the roads.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
Whatever we find.
So option one is if we have the calculation error in the fire department budget, we take that 15,000, put it in parks. Option two is if the fire department budget's true and there is no mistake, then we take 5,000 out of roads and put it into parks.
I'm okay with that,
Yeah.
Okay.
at least to work on this week until we have another public hearing next week, so.
Okay.
All right, any other thoughts before we open up the public hearing? I want to make sure we're all. All right, our first public speaker is Marcy Galley. There will be a limit of 5 minutes.
Okay, I timed myself at 3.
Oh, perfect.
Good evening, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak. My name is Marcy Galley. I live at 500 Squaw Creek Road. Since 2015, my Willow Park property taxes have increased 53%. Willow Park has almost doubled our debt service over the last 2 years, and that's just general fund. We went from $810,000 to $1.5 million. If you remove, I'm against the 375 transfer coming from water. So in my mind, the general fund is still at a deficit of $372,000. Water customers should not be supporting deficit spending in the general fund. Last year's budget included $500,000 just to balance the general fund budget. I opposed that September of last year. Within 1 month of the current budget approval, last September, bank transfers were made from CDs and reserves at $256,000. Is there a plan this year to transfer reserves in October again? Can y'all answer that?
Yes, I can. Do you have other questions?
I do. Okay, development services and admin show a reduction of $132,000 in personnel expenses from the current year. Water fund shows an increase in the same amount, plus $32,000. I'm assuming we're adding a full-time employee for the water department?
That's not correct.
Okay. Which employees in these departments were moved over to water?
So 50% of my salary, 50% of Bernie's salary, 50% of Rose's salary, 50% of Candy's salary has been moved from the general fund over to the water. The justification is we roughly spend 50% of our time dealing with water and wastewater issues.
Okay, so in response to that, I would say the enterprise funds already pay franchise fees. That's what those franchise fees are supposed to cover.
Well, they're covering
So-
salaries.
so if-
In this budget, they're covering salaries.
Okay, well, instead of moving the personnel expenses, why didn't you just increase the franchise fees? That would make it cleaner,
Well, we
for me
were,
personally.
okay.
Because, okay, the franchise fees that we pay every year from water is $98,000, so that goes over to the general fund each year. Wastewater pays around $29,000, goes over to the general fund every year. Is there any plan to increase permit fees and development services? Because I saw a deficit in the new budget of $38,000. The 2018 audit on the statement of activities showed a deficit of $108,000. I didn't know what caused that. So
I have not
are we paying Bureau Veritas more now? Are other fees going up that we need to cover?
Let me get with Bernie Parker on that,
Okay,
and
Thank you.
I'll have an answer to you this week.
okay, thank you.
But we haven't had discussion about increasing permitting fees.
Okay. Well, I noticed that it was $108,000 in the CAFR for 2018, and we're at a deficit of 39 in the current budget. So, are any water fund reserves planned to pay down the $13.7 million? Any at all? And let me tell you why I'm asking, okay? Because New Gen did rate studies in 2014 and 2017. Both of those rate studies covered the new sewer plant we needed and the new surface water agreement we needed, looping the water system, all of that. So rates were increased in 2015. I don't believe we increased the rates after the 2017 study.
No,
But
I
my
don't,
point is, those reserves, and this is why the water fund has such a surplus every year, because we're supposed to be using that surplus in order to offset these costs. And y'all are getting ready to, probably approve the TWDB loan for $13.7 million.
which we're on the hook for 52% of.
I know, yes. And that with interest is what, 9 to 10? I think is what I saw on Facebook.
The interest rate right now, if we close tomorrow,
Right, it's less than 1%.
yeah, well, actually it dropped another 20 basis points this week.
Okay, good. Good,
So you're at 0.75 fixed for 30.
okay.
If you ran,
But we still,
but if you run the numbers at 0.95 for 30 and you take 52% of 13.7, we're on the hook. Our debt service will be structured differently from year to year, obviously, but it's probably going to be anywhere from 230 to 275 a year, additional of what we have now.
230 to 275 in
Annual payments.
revenue bond?
Annual payments.
payment. Okay, it's not going to be the 500,000?
The $500,000 that you saw was
Yes.
split between Hudson Oaks and Willow Park,
They had already removed Hudson Oaks payment.
not in the 13.7.
Okay, I'll go back and look at
I
it.
was going to say, I think
But I have,
you've taken up quite a bit of
Yeah.
time
Sorry.
in
Okay.
answering.
but I do want to answer your question. You mentioned the 260,000 that was moved from,
Yes,
yeah. Let's see here.
and there are other transfers that happen.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah,
I would just like to see those shown to the city council in a report with the quarterly, you know?
they were shown to the report in the quarterly. They were
Okay.
mentioned by Jake Weber.
Even the 700,000 transfer and the 350,000 transfer?
You had emailed us about $411,000 of money that was unused.
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
The
That
two
was because,
transfers I
that was
was
because of the
speaking about-
1.5 million that was sitting in the fund for 20 years. That money was used to do well replacement and well rehab.
2003 water bonds, yes,
Actually,
not 1998. We've had this argument before.
Yeah, well, the money's there, even though you didn't think it was. The money's there, and we used that in August, September of 2018. The invoices came in, the bills were paid in October. Jake trued it up for the fiscal year of last year. That's where that money went.
The 256,000 was transferred into the general fund, correct?
Let's see here. We seem to be wandering off track here.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Okay.
Let
we
her
haven't
finish her
kept it-
So-
time, then let's
Yeah,
move on. We
I was
can't be
gonna
on
say.
this all night.
Anyway, I'm finished. I just,
Any other issues we're going to?
well, my main concern is that the trending in the city of Willow Park is not going as it should be. Our debt, if we continue to go up in the debt service, the INS, it's just going to equal less and less money for M&O. So, and I hope everybody that sits behind that desk understands that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I wish, am I the only speaker?
Yes.
That's too bad.
Well, thank you very much for coming and speaking. We do appreciate the input from our citizens. With that, I will close the public hearing at, thank you, 6:49. There's a glare right through the PM. We will recess until 7 PM for the regular city council meeting.